Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about how to solve an equation that has a square root in it. Before we do that, a couple of important principles. First thing, the inverse of square root is squaring. All right, so just like when you were first learning algebra and you learned that if you want to get rid of multiplication, you're going to use division. If you want to get rid of addition, you're going to use subtraction. Okay. To undo a square root, we're going to square. All right. That's the first thing we need to keep in mind. Second thing, extraneous solutions are simply our false solutions, meaning do not check. Okay, when we substitute back into the equation to check it, it's not going to work out. Okay, we normally don't worry about checking our solution to an equation, but when you're solving square root equations, it's going to be necessary. The reason is because if you take the square root, let's say 9, we know that's plus or minus 3. But when you square, you sometimes lose the plus or minus sign because 3 squared is 9 and negative 3 squared is also 9. Okay, sometimes when we take the square root, when we go from square root to squaring, we lose the plus or minus. So that's why we need to check for extraneous solutions. All right, let's take a look at some examples. So number 1, square root of u equals 8. So we're going to square both sides. On the left side, square root of u squared just becomes u, and the right side 64. So again, we need to check and make sure that the 64 is not extraneous. So to check, we'll take our equation, square root of u equals 8. I'll substitute in 64 for u. Square root of 64 equals 8. Square root of 64, of course, is 8, so 8 equals 8, and it checks out. So our solution is not extraneous here. Number 2, square root y minus 8 equals 5. Okay, so we'll square each side. Left side will just become y minus 8 because, again, square roots and squares undo each other. And we'll add an 8 to each side. So y is 33. Let's check. Okay, so we have square root of y minus 8 equals 5. So we'll substitute 33 minus 8 equals 5. Square root of 25 equals 5. 5 equals 5. And yeah, it checks out. So 33 is valid. It's not extraneous. Number 3, u plus 1 equals square root negative u plus 19. Okay, so again, we're going to square each side. All right, so in order to do u plus 1 squared, u plus 1 squared, I'm just going to do this off to the side, means u plus 1 multiplied by itself, which is u squared plus u plus 1, which is u squared plus 2u plus 1. So u squared plus 2u plus 1 equals, the right side will just be negative u plus 19. So now we have a quadratic equation. I'm going to move everything to the left side so that the right side will be 0. So u squared plus 3u minus 18 equals 0. And the right side will factor as u, and then the pair that'll make the 3 is 6 and 3, because 9 and 2 won't make a 3, and 18 and 1 certainly won't. So we're going to need a positive 6 and a negative 3. Nope, negative 3, sorry. And then we'll take each factor and set them individually to 0. U equals 3. U equals negative 6. Okay, and now let's check. We're going to need to check both solutions. So let's do the 3 first. Okay, so our equation was u plus 1 equals square root of negative u plus 19. So 3 plus 1, 4, equals square root negative 3 plus 19 is 16. 4 equals 4. And yeah, the 3 checks. Let's check the negative 6. So u plus 1 equals square root negative u plus 19. So negative 6 plus 1, negative 5, equals square root negative 6, so positive 6 plus 19, 25. So we'll get negative 5 equals positive 5, which is a contradiction. So negative 6 is extraneous. It doesn't check. We're going to forget about it. The only solution to number 3 is 3. Negative 6 is an extraneous solution. Okay. Number 4, 2x equals square root 5x squared minus 6x plus 5. So again, we'll square each side. Parentheses 2x squared, well, the 2 is going to get squared, 2 squared 4, x is going to get squared, so that's just x squared, equals the right side, again, the square root and square will cancel each other, so we have 5x squared minus 6x plus 5. Okay, I'm going to move the 4x squared to the right, so the left side will be 0, and we won't have a negative leading coefficient. And then we'll get 0 equals the right side factors as x minus 5 times x minus 1. Okay, take each of our factors, set them equal to 0. X is equal to 5. And x is equal to 1. Again, we're going to have to check both of the solutions, make sure neither of them are extraneous. Let's do the 1 first. So our equation was, 2x equals square root 5x squared minus 6x plus 5. So 2 equals square root 5 minus 6 plus 5. 2 equals, that's going to be square root 4. And yeah, 2 is equal to 2. So the 1 checks out. It's not extraneous. Let's check the 5. So 2x, that's going to be 10, equals square root 5 times 5 squared, so 5 squared 25 times 5, 125 minus 30 plus 5, 10 equals, that's going to be the square root of 100. So 10 is 10, 10 is equal to 10, and yes, that checks out. So the 5 is not extraneous. both of them in this case are indeed solutions. Okay, number 5 is a little different. 5 says solve for r. So 5 is solved for a. We want to get it solved for r. In other words, get it to begin with r equals. Okay, so we want to isolate the r. First, I'm going to isolate the square root of r by dividing by 4. So a over 4 is equal to the square root of r. Now we want r, not square root of r, so to eliminate that square root, I'm going to square each side. So I'm going to have a squared over 16. I'm going to square the numerator, square the denominator, is equal to r, and then just flip it to make it begin with r equals. All right, number 6 is a word problem. We have this formula t equals 2 square root of L, and t here is time in seconds, and L is the length of the pendulum. So the pendulum takes 5.98 seconds. That means t is 5.98. And what is its length? So the length we don't know. Let's substitute. 5.98 equals 2. We'll leave L because we don't know its value. 2 square root L. So I'm going to divide each side by 2. 2.99 equals the square root of L. And now we will square both sides. So that's just going to be L, and 2.99 squared is 8.9401, and the directions say nearest tenth, so it would be 8.9.